Hello and welcome back to the Talking City podcast. My name is not Joe. I'm Luke Walters and I'm taking over for Joe today. And I'm here with the ever faithful Simon Bajkowski. And yeah, there seems to be more drama in the city of Manchester than a Gavin and Stacey Christmas special these days. I thought it was a rugby score on the weekend when I saw the game against Salford, 8-0, which is mad. But Kyle Walker.
Yeah,
Kyle Walker's spoken.
Kyle
He's
Walker
handed it. Yeah.
discuss. Yeah, it was quite interesting because we often players, especially this season at City, are not in the starting lineup or the squad, and usually it's because, well, nearly all the time the reason is they're not fit or they're injured. Whereas Kyle Walker's absence was described as tactical. So there's kind of alarm bells there because you're thinking, why is you know a player that's still good enough to get in the England squad not good enough to get in a squad of 20 to play League Two opposition? And then, yeah, Pep Guardiola came right out with it. It's his press conference after the game that Walker's asked to leave, and City are exploring that. So it's not a done thing. I think the Milan clubs are kind of most interested at the minute, but there's obviously Saudi interest. I'm not sure he'll go there this month. But as it stands, Kyle Walker's leaving Man City this month, so they're losing their club captain.
Yeah, obviously, I think it's taken quite a few people by surprise. But what do you make of this entire situation? What do you think could be the motivation behind the surprise move away?
Yeah, I mean, I think we do forget that footballers are humans and have lives off the pitch. And Walker sort of nearly went to Bayern Munich 2 years ago for reasons off the pitch, because he sort of wanted to get away from his situation where he's had two children with a woman outside of his marriage. And I think his situation is played out very, very publicly over the last year, 18 months. And it can't be nice and it can't be helpful and it can't be sort of good for focusing on your day job. And he struggled. He's also struggled with injuries this year. And I think he's got to a point where, he just thinks I have to leave. I need to leave for what's best for him and what's best for his family. And I mean, some people will say, "Oh, what sort of captain is he leaving when City are in trouble?" But you could argue that it is leadership to leave sort of when to do what you're there to do, and it's been evident this season that he's not been able to be the defender that he's been for the last 7-8 years at City, and he's asked to go. So it is a sad ending to his City career, but it's I don't think he will be immediately missed by a lot of the fans.
Yeah, I was going to say, so apart from the injuries that popped up this season, but Walker's been an integral part of City's success campaign since he joined in 2017, pivotal in winning the Premier Leagues, the Champions Leagues, and so much more. How significant of a departure do you think this will be, both technically and in terms of leadership within Man City?
Yeah, I mean, they do have this leadership team that helps them, pulls them through. It's kind of been notable the last two games. Walker's come on. He's kind of refused the captain's armband when Kevin De Bruyne has had it. So you would assume that De Bruyne will take over as captain, and the rest of the players will step up. But it's enormous. He's been, he joined in 2017 and he's won 6 Premier League titles as a starting right back, which is remarkable, really. And he's not at the top of his powers, but even last season when City kind of needed someone in a big Champions League game or anything like that, they would turn to Walker. So they've got Lewis. They've not really got much else at right back, so it's gonna be a battle without him. It felt like more of a battle when he was on the pitch this season because nothing's gone for him and he's been culpable for basically an error a game.
How do you think Pep will address the gap? Like, will he rely on current players? We've already seen he's already in the market for defensive players to come in, but yeah, who do you see stepping up, or who do you see coming in to try and fill that gap?
Yeah, I mean they've agreed a fee for Abdukadir Kusunov, who will come in as a young centre back. Now he's not sort of being talked about as a guy who can come straight into the starting team, but he will be in the squad. He'll be there. They're paying, an initial 33 million for him. So y- nobody expected Josko Gvardiol to play left back, and he has been there since he joined. So it may be that Kusanov plays a bit of right back, or it may be that John Stones, Manu Akanji have played there when they've been fit. So there are options, but I think really it's kind of Rico Lewis's spot to lose now, and the hope will be that Lewis can stay fit and sort of regain some of the form that he had in the beginning of the season.
You previously mentioned some interest from AC Milan. Do you know if there's any interest from any club, any other European clubs, or potentially any Saudi Arabian clubs potentially looking down that route? And how is a potential move like this going to affect his career at actually quite a late stage, if we're being honest? But still thereabouts for England potentially. But it could really affect it going forward.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an admission. He still thinks he's plenty left in his career, and I mean Guardiola speaking the other day said he's got up to 4 years left at the top if he wants it. If his focus is there, I mean that's probably a bit of. I'm sure Man City will bring that to the negotiating table and say pay up because he's still a top player. But yeah, I think he will be looking for something in Europe this month. And if he could move to AC or into Milan, that would be a very good move for him. Because nowhere's quite as punishing as the Premier League for when you lose that little bit of pace. But as well, the money on offer in the Saudi Pro League must be very tempting, and he's got a few teammates, former City teammates in Cancelo and Mahrez and Laporte, who've all gone out there and made it work for them. So the money in Saudi will be very tempting.
And the weather would be better, I guess. It's so cold right here now in Manchester. It's so cold. And yeah, finally
Yes.
talking about this situation, Simon, how do you think the City fans are going to react to this? Because Walker's been such a fan favourite for all the years. It's not often you see a player of his calibre asked to leave, so surely it might be a little bit of a shock to the system for him.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, many City fans have probably been asking him to leave for the last few months. It's a shame because he's been a terrific player, but he doesn't always say the right things in interviews, and as club captain, he's not always said the right things. So he kind of got into a situation with the fan base where nothing he did was the right sort of action or the thing that they wanted to see, which is a shame. I mean, when the dust has settled, he will be remembered as one of the best players in the signings this era. But for the minute, I think fans will initially be sort of happy to see him go. Really.
Well, all the best to him as he searches for a new club. But now let's turn our attention to the FA Cup this weekend with City's rugby score win over Salford. I think it's the largest ever win since 1933. I can't remember, Gateshead, I think it was. But yeah, what does a result like this say about the team's quality and strength and depth?
Yeah, it was. Do you know what was really nice on Saturday at the Etihad was it just felt like a happy place, and it really hasn't felt like a happy place for months and months and months. It's been fraught, it's been tense, it's been edgy, and I mean, Salford brought 5,500 fans. I think there were quite a few United fans in that, and the City fans just treated them as if it was a United end. Just sang anti-United songs at them the whole
Yes.
game, and thoroughly enjoyed mocking them. Sang about Gary Neville and the class of
Yeah.
'92 and all that. So it was an afternoon or an evening where everyone could enjoy themselves. I think, which has been in very short supply, and also, City wins have been in very short supply. So it was, it felt like a rarity for recent times.
A little bit of a moral boost every now and again is good, even if it does come at an absolute drubbing of a local neighbour. But yeah, Salford come into this as underdogs. But do you think there's any moments where they tested City, or do you think it was all one-way traffic from the start?
So I think City were 2-0 up, and Salford had two chances in about a minute, where they could have scored, and then City went down the other end and made it 3-0, and that was kind of that. So the frailty was there. It was a much changed back line. I mean, there were only two defenders in the starting lineup, so it was kind of cobbled together a bit, but they were the same frailties that we've seen for the last 2 months. So you can't overlook them. But then once City scored the third, there was no moving from that. It was it was, as you say, one-way traffic, and particularly when Foden came on in the second half, it was you could just tell City were moving through the gears, and everyone wanted to score, and everyone pretty much was scoring.
Yeah, there were so many stand-up performances in the game, but who were you the most impressed by, and what do you think they bring to this team? Because you had some highlights in players like McAtee and Doku. Yeah, loads of younger boys putting their hands up. Who impressed you the most?
Yeah, I think Doku and Nunes were both very good. Nunes obviously last seen in the Manchester derby, giving the game away. And Doku was really sort of flattered to deceive since he was so good against Nottingham Forest last month. So to see them both sort of take the game and make sure that City won the game was impressive. And Pep saying at the end, these players, they need to score and they need to assist, they need to score and they need to assist, because it can't all be Haaland. And then James McAtee obviously scored 3 goals, which was particularly nice because I'd done the preview on him. So points to me for backing the match winner. But I mean, Pep said it himself. He didn't play as well as he can do in the first half. But I think what's important is that he scored 3 goals and he showed that he can be part of that team who is chipping in with goals and assists. He's scrapping to prove it at City. And scoring a hat trick is never a bad thing. And then I would also mention Nico O'Reilly, who played at left back, who, he's the number 10. Pep's trying him at 6. He's not fully having it. Pep played him at left back. He's not fully having it, but he looked really good. I do think there's a talent in there, a player. It's just where or if there's kind of room for City to find a way to play him a bit more.
Where do you see his position going forward? Great time
I
to ask you
mean,
that question then, wasn't it? Sorry.
he it's fine. He's always been more of a 10. I think 8 would be fine for him. I think he could play in that sort of midfield role with a bit more defensive responsibilities. I think 6 might be a bit limiting what he's done really well for so long. So I'm not sure. But then who am I to question Pep Guardiola? So Pep sees him more defensively at the minute. And whether that is long term or not, I don't know. I mean, Alex Zinchenko played a few seasons at left back, even though left back wasn't really his thing. He did it because he was told to play there, and that was how he got in the team. So I think City staff are certainly very impressed with O'Reilly, and I think he does have a future. But I think long term it might be more higher up the pitch.
Pep made several changes to the lineup for this game. How important is it for him to rotate the squad in matches like this, and how does it impact City's campaign in other competitions? It's not a slight on Salford because we know they're a lower league team, but squad rotation is always important. But
Yeah, it was. I think there would have been more. It would have been a more youthful team, but like so many senior players needed to play well, and the likes of Doku and Nunes and Grealish kind of needed that confidence boost of of dominating a game essentially. And also, Erling Haaland on the bench. That is something that everyone's wanted to see. Josco Guardiola on the bench, Rico Lewis on the bench, all three unchanged, getting a full 90 minutes off, which is really good for them. I think the Tuesday night against Brentford is the big test. No one's saying City are back on the back of an 8-0 win or 3 in a row, because Brentford are one of the strongest opposition City will play this month, but they go into it a lot better on the back of an 8-0 win, where the likes of Doku and Grealish and Nunes have kind of put themselves back in that conversation of should they or could they start.
So speaking of Grealish, then finally broke his duck. 13 months without a goal, and finally did it. It was a penalty. Loads of people will be kind of like, "Oh, well, it was a penalty." There was an assist involved in that as well. What do you think this does for his mentality in terms of confidence?
Yeah, it was a penalty, but he did win the penalty, and he was given the penalty by his teammates, and the bench and the fans were really happy for him. It was kind of like relief the way he celebrated, rather than kind of anything a bit more substantial. He knows he's not done enough over the last however many months, 18 really, and it's a road back towards getting to his best. His game is not all about goals and assists, but he does need to be bringing more to the table in terms of goals and assists, and he hasn't been doing. And so, I think it has to be seen as a positive afternoon for him. And like with a lot of these players, it's then about following it up in the next game and the next game. And we've had quite a few sort of false starts with Grealish over the last season. So now it's kind of, Pep said as well when he's criticised him recently, because I know he can do it. I see it in training. Sometimes it's just not there enough. And yeah, beating a League Two side isn't going to make City world beaters, but it might make the world beaters in their team wake up and think, what have I been doing for however many games or weeks or months?
Do you think this could be a potential turning point for him? I know it is only a League Two team, for example, as we've said, but and he's won the Champions League with them, and we've seen his post-match commentary with Thierry Henry. But do you think this game could just give him the little boost that he needs, a little kick, just to carry on the rest of the season and actually be the £100 million player that they paid for at the end of the day?
Maybe. I think people would absolutely love it if it was, because that has been the whole thing about this Guardiola team throughout the years, is that they take every game seriously and they take every competition seriously, and you never know what the turning point is going to be. And so, I think people would love to turn around at the end of the season and say, you know what, beating Salford in the FA Cup was what really did it for me, or what really did it for the team. The honest answer is we don't know yet, because it's only one game, but it it it's funny what a win can do. And for a team that is used to winning and has kind of lost that feeling of knowing how to win, just kind of getting back in the saddle almost, of sort of muscle memory, and this is what we do and this is what it takes. It can be more important than it might seem, just kind of looking at the scoreline and saying, right, well, they were obviously going to win, so it doesn't mean anything.
So potentially, then, if it's not the turning point for Grealish, do you think potentially his days could be numbered? Is he on borrowed time? Is he worth the money they paid for him, or is he going to be there at the end of the season, looking over his shoulder, worried about where he's going to end up next season?
I think he has to improve. He has to show more consistency and show that he can be the player that he sometimes is. I think the way this season has gone for City has been that sort of the last few years have been all about keeping their stars, and we need to keep these stars in our squad, because other clubs want them. And now this year it's kind of like there's been a real change, and it's like almost like nobody's safe. And Grealish is included in that. He's one of there's probably only a handful of players who you would say are definitely safe in the squad, and the rest, like Grealish has to, play like his future's under threat. There's the question of if he were to go, who's buying him and who's paying his wages, which may mean that he stays anyway, because if they can't find kind of the right bidder or the right buyer for him, then that sort of decides for them. But yeah, definitely he has to kind of play as if his future is dependent on these next 6 months.
But that's we'll leave Grealish there. So let's talk about the young players as well. You were on about McAtee earlier. Scored a hat trick. It's quite a standout moment for him. What does performance say about his development and future role in the team? I know we spoke about it briefly earlier, but do you think is he starting to push now for first team?
He should be. He came on at Leicester in the Premier League in a sort of not an easy spot, and he changed the game. And he's scored a hat trick when he's had his first start for 3 months. It feels like he can't do much more. But at the same time, he came off the bench at Leicester and changed the game, and then didn't really play against West Ham. And Pep always speaks so highly of him, speaks so nicely about him. But if he doesn't play him, then the player is entitled to feel a bit miffed that he's not getting more minutes. And there are a lot of more clubs in the January window who are, willing to give him more minutes. So he's a player that I think City could lose this month, either on loan or permanent. But like they would love to keep him, but if he's not getting the minutes now, and Oscar Bobb's coming back, and the signing Omar Marmoush from Frankfurt that's going to limit his minutes further. If he's already not getting any minutes and that number is about to go down, there isn't much incentive for him to stay. Like, however nice Pep might be about him in press conferences.
But it just wasn't Maxi though. Wabamba, and you mentioned Nico O'Reilly as well. They also found the net. How encouraging is it to see this level of contribution from City's academy coming through?
Yeah, it's important, and it was one game, but I think you look at someone like O'Reilly playing that performance, and you think he can help out again, and it's just about that at that age. It's about opportunity, so that you're more likely to be in the picture than you were when you started that game, basically. I mean, Pep said during this run that they've had that maybe he's trusted the senior players too much, and he's not played the youngsters enough. That we've kind of been accepted that City haven't had a big enough squad. So maybe the likes of O'Reilly and McAtee can start playing a bit more, and Simpson Pusi can start playing at centre back in the odd game to give the centre backs a rest, and maybe Mabama can come on for Haaland in the last 10 minutes of games to give him a bit of a rest. So that it was a very, it was an evening full of positives, really.
I was going to say, do you think we'll see any of these players essentially just making the leap to more Premier League, or not so much Champions League, but Premier League appearances? But yeah, it's a tricky position to be in, isn't it? To be honest.
Yeah, it's horrendously difficult to make it into the first team as a regular, but all they can do is do what they did on Saturday, which is give Pep something else to think about. And I think they've done it. I think we will see O'Reilly a bit more. We'll see McAtee if he stays, and yeah, maybe less so Simpson, Pusi, Mabama, but you never know. Like Rico Lewis proved a few years ago that someone can come from nowhere and play a lot of minutes. So there is scope for that. But the Pep talks about young players sort of playing without fear of anything, and they certainly did that. And gave Pep exactly what he was looking for.
So how do you think Pep manages and balances giving these younger players the opportunities while also managing, the demands of the Premier League and the high profile stakes of City is supposed to be winning the Premier League every season. Like, it feels like, and you've got these players that are trying to force their way in, but they don't seem to. So obviously, you mentioned going out on loan and stuff for Riley, and yes, how do you think Pep needs to find a way to balance it to try and push the academy players through?
Yeah, it is. It is really hard to make it. And you look at Foden, but Foden is like such a gifted footballer. He was probably always going to make it. It is. It's hard, but I think sort of the more you see of the young players, the more you think, like we were saying, with everyone has to prove themselves in the squad. If people aren't doing that, the more senior players, then play the young players, put them in. I think that is what every good performance they do in the whenever they play will help to show. And like, the next round will be either at Derby or Leyton Orient. That is another game where if you're James McAtee or Nico O'Reilly, you're saying, right, I need to do enough between now and then to make sure that I'm in the team for that game. Because Guardiola is not a manager to sort of chuck all the kids in for as a present for like performances in training, but he will give people largely what they deserve if they've earned the spot. It's just about setting those kind of realistic goals that they can then use to kind of further push themselves into the first team plan.
Who do you see being the one that could potentially break through? If it was just one, just the one that's going to break through. If you were to, from a performance this
Yeah.
weekend, if you're going to pinpoint
I
someone, I
mean,
know he scored a hat
yeah,
trick, but
the the best performer this week was probably O'Reilly. Probably O'Reilly. He's one of those where his talents could either kind of fall through the cracks, or it will be some kind of masterstroke that playing him in these different positions turns him into sort of a solution that nobody was expecting.
so transfers. The big one, everyone wants to know about. What's going on with the transfer market with City? You've mentioned it. They've signed. Sorry, the name slips me. But you paid 33 million for him coming in. Is there any other
Yeah.
transfers we should know about that's potentially on the horizon?
I mean, they're close to a deal for Marmoush, the Frankfurt forward, which will be. I think they've not agreed a price yet, and the price could be sort of upwards of 60 million, which would be a sizable fee. And yeah, they're in talks with Palmeiras for Vita Rice, who's a young defender, but Palmeiras want kind of him to stay until after the Club World Cup in July. So there's upshot about that. And then, there's a few murmurs around a midfielder as well. Obviously, they're without Rodri for the rest of the season. I think the thing is with midfield, Zubimendi and Bruno Guimaraes at Newcastle were sort of ruled out before the window even. I think the question for midfield they have to ask is kind of, is it better to wait until the summer and go for someone like Zubimendi, who might be more willing to move in the summer, or somebody else who is more available in the summer than just buying someone in January for the sake of it? Kind of, I think buying Kusunov and Rice, if they manage to get that over the line in defence, will enable them to have the cover in midfield that they don't need to buy in midfield in January. But they are looking because they have to prepare for every availability. It kind of feels like they went in to this season not prepared for that, and it has been extremely injury list, but they can't kind of use that excuse twice, because they've got a window now to rectify it.
No, it's certainly very, very interesting time to be a Man City fan. Yeah, I think we've covered all topics I have down today, unless Simon, you've got something yourself to add.
No, all comprehensive and done for me.
That is the end of talking City today. I am not Joe, as previously mentioned. Yeah, thanks. Thanks to Simon for coming on and imparting his wise words as always, and yeah, for letting us know the drama around Man City and obviously the 8-0 win. So yeah, thanks for listening, and we shall see you all on Friday, I believe, for the next episode of Talking City.